Welcome back to America's Forum. I'm J.D. Hayworth.
And I'm John Bachman. J.D. Louisiana Representative Vance McAllister is getting some support from GOP House leadership today. Representative McAllister, as many folks are aware now, is married, a father of 5. He was caught on camera. You can see the images right here, kissing a member of his staff. He has apologized to his constituents after this video became public. The congressman asked for forgiveness and said he promised to work hard to earn back the trust of those he's disappointed. One person who is on his side is the House Majority Leader, Eric Cantor.
First of all, I think that his constituents deserved an apology. I'm glad he issued an apology. I've not had a chance to speak to the congressman, so I'm going to reserve further judgment on the question. I will say that the American people deserve all of their representatives here in Washington to hold to a very high standard of behavior and conduct.
Well, Congressman McAllister is, of course, up for re-election. The staffer in that video, however, has been terminated, according to what the congressman's chief of staff told a Louisiana newspaper. So there you have it, J.D. The congressman who's elected by the voters, he's got another chance come November, but the woman has lost her job, and you know how this is going to play out in the media, of course. Washington Post, among many publications, saying this is how Republicans kiss goodbye the votes of women.
Well, I will tell you, as a recovering member of Congress, the Washington Post not always an objective observer of what happens. For example, despite the fact, when we talked about this yesterday, moral turpitude, sadly, is a bipartisan situation. Despite allegations of, how can I put this gently, domestic unrest and strife and perhaps even abuse at the home of Democrat Congressman Alan Grayson, an Orlando television station reporting on some 911 tapes, that has not made national news. And I believe everyone should be held to a high standard, but the national media loves to kind of give the attention to Republicans who fall down. And that is something that is a challenge. Speaking of challenges for the Republican Party, how to maintain conservatism and become, well, with an eponymous title, a big tent. Our guest now, author Mallory Factor, the John C. West Professor of International Politics and American Government at the Citadel, joining us now from Newsmax, New York. Mallory, we are so glad to have you here to talk about your new book, which is doing quite well, isn't it, on the sales list? It's called Big Tent. The story of the conservative revolution is told by the thinkers and doers who made it happen.
It's doing great. People are buying because they knew I was going to be on this show. I'm thrilled.
The America's Forum bump.
That's right. We're expecting to see it go even higher, Mallory. And it's interesting now because obviously politics is the act of addition, adding people to your cause. John just talked about the Washington Post opining this whole thing with Congressman McAllister, another development in the GOP's war on women. What can the party do to resurrect a more positive image, or will it ever be thus with a national media that apparently has a clear and abiding double standard?
Well, let's be real clear about it. The book's about conservatism. Conservatism is an ideology. Republican is a party like Democrats. It's a team sport. It is not an ideology. Republicans started out as an ideology, but it is no longer. The movement, the conservative movement is, in Big Tent, we focus on really what makes the conservative movement. What is the conservative movement? First of all, the conservative movement in most people's minds is, outside of the movement, is quite homogeneous. It isn't. The conservative movement is a heterogeneous movement. And as a matter of fact, a lot of conservatives would rather kill and burn the heretics from other wings of the movement than unite and fight the infidels that are trying to tear down our great country.
Well, of course, the clear and abiding challenge politically, Mallory, in terms of party politics is the primary situation that you always have, and I'm a guy who went through a five-way primary to get elected to Congress, and thankfully it did not have an impact on the general election. And once I got to Congress, I served with Newt Gingrich. I'll never forget when Newt was the speaker, when you'd go into his office, a huge picture of Martin Luther King Jr. on one side and another huge picture of Dwight David Eisenhower. And of course, Newt offers an essay in Big Tent about reaching out to people of color. We've seen a change. By and large, the Republican Party historically led on civil rights, but again, in instant revisionism, that role in leading on civil rights is reserved for the left in terms of what the left claims and what friendly journalists say. What is Newt saying in his essay in Big Tent?
Well, what Newt is basically saying is that the American Republican Party is a party that started in 1854. In March, as a matter of fact, they floated the name Republican. And 8 months later, because it was an ideology, it took over the United States Congress. And 6 years later, it elected a president. It was brand new in March of 1854. If you listen to the mainstream media, not people who are smart enough to listen to you all, I mean, what you hear is that conservatives are racist, sexist, xenophobes, homophobes, they're for economic inequality, and they're for militarism. The fact is, there are 4 overriding concepts that you see in Big Tent, and you understand really what is conservative if you read Big Tent. The first concept is respect for wisdom and tradition of past generations. The second is maintenance in the rule of law. The third is protection of individual freedoms and liberty. And the fourth is a belief in a higher law above man's law. That's the conservative movement.
Well, Mallory, we only have about a minute to go, and I want to wrap up on this and talk about this issue of another ideology, and that is libertarianism. And how does that square with social conservatives? A guy like Rand Paul comes to mind specifically. Is he a guy that can rally everybody? I mean, you talked about the conservative ideology, but the Republicans, they still need the votes if they want to oust Hillary Clinton, perhaps, or whoever that challenger might be. But do you think that Rand Paul can also apply this Big Tent idea and bring the party together?
Well, I'm sorry we have such little time. First of all, Rand is a contributor in Big Tent. Second of all, if you heard Rand's speech at CPAC, you saw a man who got a standing ovation. Same speech, almost the same speech at Berkeley, another standing ovation. He is bridging that gap.
He is. There's no question about that, bringing a new generation in as well. He clearly gets the younger voters.
Mallory Factor, author of Big Tent, we thank you for your time. We look forward to talking to you again. America's Forum continues.
Tonight we are a country awakened to danger.
Tear down this wall.
Not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
Ask what you can do for your country.